the most hotly talked about topics in all of the Boruto community is about a little thing known as power creep. Now, power creep isn't a term that I knew or understood until I dove into the Boruto fandom. Because A, that's not usually the kind of terminology I associate myself with, and B, Boruto, more than a lot of other modern anime and manga, does have a bit of a power creep issue. And therefore, because it is an incredibly prevalent topic in the Boruto community, I became familiar with the term and how it applies to Boruto. See, power creep, for those of you who are happy, is a term used in basically all fiction-based circles, but mostly anime. And it refers to when a story slowly but surely continues to incrementally increase the power of the characters in the universe. That is to say that the powers of the universe keep creeping forward. Good examples of IPs that have a fair amount of power creepage are things like Dragon Ball and One Punch Man. Stories where every singular bad guy is stronger than the last bad guy by a factor of 10, and thus all of the characters who want to defeat that bad guy have to get stronger by a factor of 10, and there doesn't appear to really be an upper limit. And wow, what's happening in Boruto is not nearly as bad as what happens in the likes of Dragon Ball and One Punch Man and similar stories every single day. With the passing of the time skip, the reveal of Boruto's new power level, and the reveal of the new bad guys of Two Blue Vortex, the Shinju, who appear to be stronger than Ishiki somehow, people are beginning to claim that Boruto might have a little bit of a power creepage issue. And today, I'd like to talk about that topic, because today I want to talk about the points of both sides of this argument. I want to establish the argument that those who are saying Boruto is going through power creepage and therefore that's hindering the story, and those who say that the power scaling in Boruto is actually not that much different from what we saw in Naruto. And then in the end, once I've laid out both arguments for you, tell you how I feel on the topic. Full disclosure here, for the argument of those saying that the power scaling between Boruto and Naruto is not so dissimilar, I'm going to be using a Reddit post written by somebody who we've talked about on this page a couple of times before, Emil. Because while power creepage isn't really something that I think about on a daily basis, I think the arguments that Emil brings forward for saying that Boruto does not in fact suffer from power creepage are interesting, compelling, and worth talking about. So with no further ado, let's get into Boruto's biggest flaw explained. But before we get to explaining anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you want to hear me talk about your favorite anime and manga's flaws, then go ahead and follow my other channel, The Weeb Commander, where instead of talking about Naruto and Boruto, I'd talk all other anime. Or if you just want to see me expose all of my flaws, go ahead and follow my anime podcast, Otaku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And if you want to look like somebody who knows what the word power creep means, go ahead and meander on over into my merch store, otakusanonymous.net, where you can pick up some of the greatest anime t-shirts, sweatshirts, and sticker packs known to man. But before we get into all that, guys, today I want to talk about a brand new sponsor to the page, Warby Parker. See, as you guys know, I wear glasses. They're not prescription, they're blue light. Yes, I can see, but I don't love these glasses. They're a sake of convenience. They were $8. And so I'm always looking for better quality, better looking glasses. And genuinely, I feel as though every single time I find a pair of glasses I really like, they're several $100s, and I feel like the quality's not up to par. Well, fortunately, Warby Parker has walked into my life. See, when it comes down to all things eyeballs, Warby Parker's got you covered. Whether you need blue lights, contact lenses, sunglasses, Warby Parker is there for you. And genuinely, it's never been easier to get a pair of Warby Parkers that you love. Because Warby Parker has a free home try-on program that allows you to select 5 pairs of glasses to try on at home and see if you like the way they look. And today, I want to walk you through a couple of my selections. See, Warby Parker knows that every single one of us has a beautiful and unique face. And before you jump in with a brand new set of glasses, you should see what they look like on that beautiful and unique face. You can see if you want to go for a thicker rim than usual, and trust me when I say these are much more high quality than the ones I was previously wearing. You can see if you want to go for a thinner, more wiry, maybe more educated frame than you had prior. One of these glasses might look as though they're too thin and they might feel cheap. Trust me when I tell you, I have the utmost confidence in the structural integrity of these frames right here. And maybe, just maybe, you've worn the same shape of glasses your entire life, so you want to switch up your shape a little bit and see how that would look. Let's just say, I don't mind the new shape. But here's the thing, while I crushed it in my selection, at least with the 3 pairs you've seen me put on thus far, I got a 4th pair where I definitely did not crush it in the selection. As you can see, these are a bit small. But imagine that I fell in love with this pair and I saw it online and I ordered it for myself, only for it to arrive at my doorstep and realize too small. That's the beauty of this try-at-home program. So you can try on 5 pairs of glasses that you love in the comfort of your own home, get everybody's reactions, snap a couple of pictures, see what's most popular, and then send all those pairs back to Warby Parker and order the pair that you love online. All with the confidence and the knowledge knowing that you got the best pair of glasses you possibly could have. So what are you guys waiting for? Go to warbyparker.com/nchammer and get your pair of glasses today. And then maybe, just maybe, you can look this good. So, power creep in Boruto. Why do people say it exists? What's the argument they use to say that Boruto is being plagued by this awful trope? Well, to really establish why we're dealing with power creep allegations here, we gotta talk about Boruto as a whole. And more importantly, we have to talk about next generation sequels in manga and anime as a whole. See, Boruto is by far and away not the first manga that makes a sequel of a popular story with the next generation living in the same world. And it will absolutely not be the last. In fact, this trope is so common, it has its own turn. Spin offspring. And tons of manga have done it. Mobile Suit Gundam Wing has a spin-off novel sequel called Frozen Teardrop that takes the cast from the anime and puts them in mentor roles for their children who are also becoming Gundam pilots. Eureka 7 AO features the child of the 2 main characters of Eureka 7, Renton and Eureka. Inuyasha recently released an anime-only sequel, Yashahime, and the entirety of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is spin-offspring. Not to mention, Four Nights of the Apocalypse, which is the spin-offspring story of the 7 Deadly Sins, just got its anime release in America a couple months ago. So Boruto, like I've said, is not the only spin-offspring story in anime and manga. But here's the thing with spin-offspring stories. Because inherently they tell the stories of the children of the main characters of the previous story, that means those children are being raised in the worlds that those main characters created. And I don't know if you guys have ever read a manga where the enemies at the beginning of the manga are stronger than the enemies at the end of the manga, but usually every single manga and anime has a small amount of power creep. Luffy goes from gear 2 to gear 3 to gear 4 to gear 5. Because if Luffy, Goku, and Naruto keep doing the same transformation over and over and over again, there's no sense of impending doom. There's no scale. So because the original story happened in the same world, where the new story is starting inherently has to start on a power level comparable to where the main story left off. Because if we just hit the reset button on power, then all of the main characters from the previous story can just sweep in and fix anything at any given moment. That is to say, so long as the characters from the main story are still alive. Now, if you do, hypothetically, hit the reset button and say, oh, this character is the great-great-grandson of the main character of that story you're so familiar with, and in those 200 or so years of peace, the entire idea of ninja kind of faded to the side, then yes, you can hit the reset button, because now you've established the fact that the powers have reset. But if you back-to-back these stories and put them within a lifetime of each other, and the main characters are still alive, then the power level is still as high as it was left off at the end of their series. And thus, heading into the beginning of Boruto, there was already multiple planetary characters in Naruto. Before Boruto was even a twinkle in his father or mother's eyes, Naruto was battling against Toneri on the moon, and he tanked a shot that cut the moon in half. The Suicide Corps, led by Rock Lee, were able to cut a meteor larger than the one that Madara threw at the Shinobi Alliance in half with relative ease. And the only thing that was easier than that was Sasuke using a base Chidori to slice up what was left of that meteor, falling on Konoha. And then in the light novels, between the timeline of Naruto and Boruto, the blank period, we had things like Sasuke making proclamations that he was now strong enough to 1v1 a Kaguya level threat. So here's the thing. It's called the blank period for a reason. See, because the first real time we check in with Naruto after the war arc is 3 years after its conclusion. And while it's understood in that time that Naruto has been training and getting better with his KCM2 and his Sage Mode, Naruto goes in those 3 years from a character that needed the help of DMS Kakashi, Sasuke, and Sakura to get 2 hands on Kaguya to a literal god-busting monster who's able to separate Kurama from him so Kurama can go fight on his own and simultaneously box with an Otsutsuki. And not just any Otsutsuki, an Otsutsuki who unlocked a dojutsu comparable to the Rinne Sharingan. But how did Naruto get here? Well, we don't really know. Like I said, while there definitely is a couple of light novels that cover the blank period, the only one of them that's about Naruto in any capacity is Konoha Hiden, A Great Day for a Wedding, which is just Hinata and Naruto's wedding. And thus the power level that we get at the beginning of Boruto isn't actually the power level that was left for us at the end of Naruto Shippuden. It's the power level that was left for us after all of the light novels in the blank period. And over the course of the blank period, Naruto and Sasuke probably got as much stronger relative to how strong they were prior to the blank period as they did over the duration of the entire war arc. And this is why in Sasuke's light novel, he's able to confidently say that he could 1v1 Kaguya, something 4th grade Shinobi World War Sasuke couldn't dream of. So what am I building at here? Well, basically, that power creep didn't start with Boruto. Power creep started with Naruto. See, because power creep has always been a part of Naruto's story. Genuinely, do you remember how long Naruto has his KCM1 form? Well, I'll tell you, I'm the Naruto YouTuber. Naruto unlocks KCM1 in episode 247 of Shippuden. In episode 329, Naruto unlocks KCM2. Now, I know there's a lot of you saying, Nick, that's 80 whole episodes that Naruto only had KCM1. Well, kind of, except for the fact that almost half of the episodes between 247 and 329 are filler. So it really ends up being closer to 40-ish episodes. 40 episodes. That's how long it took for Naruto to go from KCM1 to KCM2. And let's not forget that during the war arc, Naruto and Sasuke just get gifted power-ups from Hagoromo. Because if the story dictates that Naruto and Sasuke need to be X amount of powerful to defeat X foe, then they're gonna get there, and pretty quickly, apparently. Okay, then so why does Boruto get accused of power creep when Naruto didn't? Well, because the scale's getting higher, and not in a way that's visual. See, because in Naruto, when a character, like Naruto, got stronger, it usually came with some additional form. It comes with a Rasengan, it comes with a Rasen Shuriken, it comes with KCM1 and being able to create tailed beast balls in your hand. It comes with KCM2 and manifesting a giant Kurama cloak. It comes with adding KCM2 to Sage mode and making 3 giant Kuramas, smashing them together and making a 3-face, 6-arm Kurama that could throw Rasen Shurikens at Sasuke. With an increase in power in Naruto came scale. Boruto doesn't have scale, and that's intention. See, by the end of the story, Kishimoto, just like the rest of us, realized, oh, these aren't ninjas anymore. These are dudes with headbands piloting chakra mechs, and thus one of the key switches that Kishimoto wanted to make between Naruto and Boruto was making ninjas great again. Because, and this is undeniable, one of the things that made Naruto so incredible was the hand-to-hand combat, the taijutsu, and thus Kishimoto shrunk the scale. And you can actually physically see Kishimoto shrinking the scale in the battle between Naruto, Sasuke, and Ishiki, as Jigan / Ishiki is not only able to run laps around Naruto in his giant Kurama mode, but also Sasuke in his perfect Susanoo. And as Jigan is ripping Sasuke out of his Susanoo, we've now established the fact that bigger is no longer better. But that goes against everything we know in our puny anime brains. That's why Gurren Lagann is so popular, because the stronger the characters get in Gurren Lagann, the bigger the mechs, until eventually they're universe-sized. But in Boruto, we're seeing a shrinking in scale, but an increase in power. Because Jigen and Ishiki don't have a giant form, they just have unparalleled strength. And thus Jigen and Ishiki, who don't have some giant 3-face 6-arm form, defeating an adult Naruto and Sasuke feels wrong, at least to some people. I didn't mind it at all. I actually found it very entertaining. But a lot of people felt as though Ishiki popping into the story and instantly being stronger than Naruto and Sasuke was the beginning of power creep in Boruto. Because just a couple of dozen chapters prior to Ishiki's run in the Boruto manga, Momos Shiki had descended down to earth and broken up the Chunin exams. And not only were Naruto and Sasuke enough ninja for Momos Shiki, they were more than enough. And if it wasn't for Kisuke, the scientist one, throwing a bunch of ninjutsu at Momos Shiki when he was down and out, Naruto and Sasuke, with pretty minimal effort, would have destroyed a fused Momos Shiki. However, what people don't realize about the Chunin exams in Momos Shiki's arc is that Momos Shiki's role, outside of being a very important character in the entirety of Boruto, was to come down to earth and remind everybody just how powerful Naruto and Sasuke are. And as Naruto and Sasuke are able to toss mitts with a fused Momos Shiki in base, it's meant to remind us that they haven't lost their touch, that they're as powerful as they always were. The universe has not backslid. If anything, it's made leaps and bounds in power. As Momos Shiki, while not guaranteed to be stronger than Kaguya, does talk down on Kaguya as a lower-ranked Otsutsuki.
But Nick, why? Why do we need to confirm that the universe is as powerful as it's always been?
Well, to set the standard for what we're talking about power-wise moving forward. But the problems don't necessarily start after Momos Shiki. As a lot of people have gripes with the fact that currently in Boruto, we probably have the weakest cavalcade of Kages we've ever had, and yet Gaara and Darui seem to be strong enough to go toe-to-toe with the likes of a lower-ranking Otsutsuki in Kinshiki. And given that Kinshiki hadn't sacrificed his body to fuse with Momos Shiki, the other 4 Gokage, not named Naruto, probably would have been enough to defeat him. And this is consistent with the fact that Sasuke, in the beginning of the Chunin exams arc, when he ends up in a 1v2 versus Kinshiki and Momos Shiki, appears to be more than enough to defeat somebody like Kinshiki on his own. And thus people began to ask the question, are the weakest cavalcade of Gokage now somehow Otsutsuki level? And the answer is maybe, but also probably not. See, well, yes, it's been 16 years since the conclusion of the Fourth Great Shinobi World War, and all of the Gokage, as the strongest shinobi within their villages, have probably had a fair amount of time to improve their craft. To assume that these 4 Gokage, when working together, are as strong as an Otsutsuki, when the 5 Gokage of the Fourth Great Shinobi World War, who should for all intents and purposes be stronger than these 4 Gokage, weren't strong enough to take on a non-fully realized Madara, who should, for all intents and purposes, be weaker than an Otsutsuki. And while I do think you could look at the story and say, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, I think if that confuses you, you're looking at the story too two-dimensional. We have to realize the scale of the opponents the Shinobi Alliance was battling against in the Fourth Great Shinobi World War. The 5 Gokage who were battling against Madara in the Fourth Great Shinobi World War were battling against a perfect body, infinite chakra, dual Rinnegan Madara, who had regeneration because he was Edo Tensei. And while this is by far and away not the strongest version we see of Madara, I have not a singular ounce of hesitancy in me when I say that that version of Madara could beat Kinshiki in a fight. Because the alternative to that line of logic, if you assume that Kinshiki is stronger than that version of Madara, is that Chojuro, Darui, Koretsuchi, and Gaara, without Shukaku, are stronger than Inoki, Tsunade, Mai, and Gaara, without Shukaku. And while Gaara absolutely does get stronger between the Fourth Great Shinobi World War and his battle against Momos Shiki, so much so that his taijutsu is actively compared to that of Naruto's, probably the greatest taijutsu user on Earth who doesn't have a bowl cut. Chojuro is a massive step down in power from Mai, and Koretsuchi is a massive step down from Inoki in terms of power, especially when you consider the fact that Madara looked at all the Kage and said, I think Inoki's the only one who's a real threat. And thus the idea of Boruto-based power creep might just be conflated with the fact that people saw a low-level Otsutsuki get defeated by people we didn't think were all that strong, when in actuality the Otsutsuki who was defeated may just not be that strong. But because people believe that the Gokage now scale to lower Otsutsuki level, it's hard not to look at the Boruto universe and ask the question, where'd all this power come from? And problems like that continue to arise. The most glaring and obvious of all those problems being a little package known as Jigan/Ishiki. So because now that the precedent had been set that Naruto and Sasuke were still absolute planet busters in their battle against Momos Shiki, the entirety of the Boruto fandom assumed that with the introduction of Jigan/Ishiki, they would continue on that tirade. However, that's not what happened, as Momos Shiki being defeated by Naruto and Sasuke was meant to put them on a pedestal that Jigan was chopping the base out of. And thus, with the introduction of Jigan's character and the dismantling of the idea that bigger is better, the standard for what power would look like was set in Boruto. But the reestablishment of that power standard confused a lot of people, because now, as it stands, Jigan, who is an incomplete karma vessel for Ishiki and therefore not as strong as Ishiki, amped with the chakra of the Ten Tails, is stronger than Naruto and Sasuke combined. And if Sasuke is truly strong enough to defeat Kaguya one-on-one, and Naruto is stronger than Sasuke, then that means this incomplete karmic vessel of Ishiki is twice as strong, at least, as Kaguya, who, mind you, survived having an entire moon crushed around her, and has the ability to rip parts of dimensions to her current location. And therefore this means that Jigan, not Ishiki, Jigan is at least twice as powerful as Kaguya, which would kind of make sense when you consider their history, as Ishiki and Kaguya came down to the planet together and Ishiki was the higher rank Otsutsuki. Now, Jigan just kind of popping out of nowhere and kicking Naruto and Sasuke's teeth down their throat was a bit odd, because apparently he's been around for 2,000 years, so why did he choose now to hop into the fray? Great question, we still don't have the answer to it. But the introduction of a new character who's the strongest in the entire world isn't crazy. It had to happen. Somebody had to be stronger than Naruto and Sasuke, otherwise it was going to be their story. However, even though Jigan is able to beat Naruto and Sasuke with relative ease, it does drain him. He uses all the chakra that his vessel's able to hold on to, and thus a 10% Jigan finds himself in combat against Kashin Koji, who is technically able to kill Jigan. Now, some people use this as a way to argue that, oh, Kashin Koji is somehow stronger than Naruto and Sasuke combined, which he isn't, because it is very clearly established that we're talking about a 10% powered Jigan here. But after Jigan is killed, Ishiki is awoken, and Ishiki, well timed, is technically stronger than Jigan. And so he kicks Naruto and Sasuke's teeth down their throat once again. And it's not until Naruto sacrifices Kurama and half of his own chakra that he's able to shave down Ishiki's clock. But in that moment, through Baryon mode, Naruto was stronger than Ishiki, which means in that moment, Naruto was as strong as 2+ Kaguya's. Though that moment was temporary, and immediately after that, Sasuke's eye is stabbed out. Now this is interesting, because while, yes, Ishiki is dead and gone, we have now seen what the height of power can look like in Boruto. But that peak was only hit temporarily, and thus almost as soon as the universe was established to be this powerful, it was gone. But don't worry, in a small matter of time, we got back to that point. See, because even though Ishiki was gone from the story, his powers weren't, as Amado was able to essentially crystallize all of Ishiki's powers and put them into an artificial karma marking he put on Kawaki. And just like that, as soon as Kawaki was able to unlock all of the 8 spokes in his Dharma wheel, it seemed as though Kawaki was as strong as Ishiki. At least that's what conventional knowledge about the karma marking would tell you. If he has all of Ishiki's battle experience and abilities, it would make sense that Kawaki ballparks somewhere to Ishiki's level. And maybe even beyond Ishiki's level when you consider the fact that Kawaki's entire body is shinobi wear. But that's kind of a problem, because pre-time skip it was established that Code had limiters placed on him because Ishiki Jigan was afraid that Code without limiters would be stronger than him, because Code was kind of Kawaki's template, as Code himself has a white karma marking that gives him all of Ishiki's power but none of Ishiki's soul. And Code, just before the time skip, was able to get his limiters lifted by Amado, which means that Code should also ballpark somewhere in the region of Ishiki because he's stronger than Jigan. And along came the time skip. Now, we're not really privy to anything that happened at the time skip. That's how time skips work. At least in Naruto.
Kaki, you see how this snake jumped at me? He's a good guy. He just needs a little loving.
But on the other end of the time skip, the end of the time skip we're currently on, Two Blue Vortex, a couple of characters seem to get a whole lot more powerful, but none more so than Boruto. Because while Boruto was a boy who had to run away from Kawaki, Ada, and the forces of Konoha pre-time skip, and a boy who definitely didn't stand a chance against the likes of Naruto, Sasuke, and definitely not Ishiki pre-time skip, could now clear all of those forces with relative ease. As one of the first things that Boruto did post-time skip was one-shot Limitless Code, somebody who supposedly he'd been on the run from for 3 whole years. And if Boruto's able to one-shot Code, and he truly was able to one-shot him, then that means Boruto's way stronger than Limitless Code, who supposedly is as strong as Ishiki. So now Boruto, in the course of 3 years that we haven't seen, is an Ishiki or greater level threat. And while Boruto is definitely the only person who made a jump that definitive, as even though Mitsuki got stronger and more confident in his Sage mode, he stood no chance against Boruto, and Kawaki has been jumped 3 separate times in 8 chapters. Unfortunately, Boruto can't be alone in this massive power jump, otherwise the manga has no stakes. And thus, the Akatsuki of Two Blue Vortex, the Shinju, were introduced. And the Shinju, when they first appeared to Boruto, were able to give Boruto a run for his money, which means even the weakest amongst the Shinju, which is presumably the Bug Shinju, scale to Ishiki's level. And this kind of makes sense when you consider the fact that the leader of the Shinju is Jura, who's supposed to be the reincarnation of Jigan in a 10-tails body. And if the events of Chapter 8 have told us anything, Jura is way stronger than Kawaki, as Jura and Hidari essentially one-tapped Kawaki. And if Kawaki is supposed to be as powerful as the person whose karma mark he's wielding, then yeah, he should be Ishiki level, which means that all 4 of the Shinju should scale higher than Ishiki, because that's where Boruto scales now, and we need stakes. But if you think about it objectively, that's not that crazy, at least relative to everything we've seen in the history of Naruto. Yeah, sure, Naruto doesn't come back from his time skip nearly as different as Boruto came back from his, but Naruto also wasn't on the run from the strongest people on the planet for 3 years. I mean, like, he kind of was, but he wasn't super aware of it. And really, all we're saying here is that everybody is kind of scaled to Ishiki's level when Ishiki was clearly depicted to be stronger than Naruto and Sasuke combined, at least pre-Baryon mode. And while there hasn't been a ton of explanation to explain how everybody got there, there also kind of has been. The Shinju are as strong as Ishiki because they are Ten Tails with consciousness, which was like the one glaring flaw in the Ten Tails throughout the entirety of the 4th Great Shinobi World War. Kawaki scales to Ishiki because of his karma marking, and Boruto scales to Ishiki because of his karma marking and his ninja training. So really when it comes down to it, while the Boruto power creep seems somewhat incremental and constant, the only person whose power has genuinely creeped has been Boruto's, and that's probably got something to do with his connection to Shibai. And while I do fully acknowledge the fact that Boruto got strong quick, and by quick I mean literally 0 chapters, I don't think it's as egregious as some people think, especially when you consider the fact that Naruto and Sasuke underwent a similar transformation in the blank period, and the majority of those power scaling feats either happen in a light novel or the last, so not even Boruto. But now that you understand the argument of Boruto's experiencing power creep, let's talk about the opposite argument, that there is no power creep in Boruto. And from this, I'm going to be reading from a Reddit post that Emil made, so bear with me here. Emil writes, people always complain about power creep from the middle or end of Naruto to Boruto and say it's absurd or disrespectful to the franchise or whatever else complaints they may have about it. But the power creep they plan to despise barely exists. And I think the first point that's being made here is possibly a point Emil didn't even mean to make. And that is that if you want to talk about power creep in the Naruto universe, you have to start with Naruto, specifically Shippuden, and more specifically, post-Pain arc. Because if anything, the power creep from the beginning of the war arc to where we are in Boruto is pretty much a straight line. Emil continues, it's just the fights that have changed because new enemies have new types of abilities like ninjutsu absorption. And that kind of ties into what I was talking about earlier, how Kishimoto is trying to rally against the idea that bigger is better. And ninjutsu absorption is a really big point of that. See, because now that everybody who has a karma marking or Rinnegan palms has the ability to absorb all ninjutsu at the highest level of battles has basically been completely nullified. It's been made irrelevant. And thus the Boruto universe is as heavily reliant on taijutsu as OG Naruto. Now the difference is everybody's durability in AP is much higher even though it doesn't look like it. So while it may look like a standard punch, that standard punch could wipe out a small city if focused at it. Kind of like Goku getting in a sock fest with Jiren. The post continues by saying, your high tiers from Naruto could fight Otsutskis, and this is proven in the time slip arc, which is anime canon, and the Momos Shiki versus arc, which is manga canon. We see people like Koretsuchi and Chodoro, who yes, are Kage, but are otherwise your pretty average shinobi with no special god-given powers like Hack's Kekigenkai. I mean, Koretsuchi does have, I believe, 2 Kekigenkai. I think she has boil release and lava release, and the applications in which she uses both of these Kekigenkai are not all that impressive. I mean, her lava release is just quick lime and or like ash? Koretsuchi's got weird abilities. Continuing with the post, or literal god reincarnation type stuff, and they're able to team up and take down Otsutsuki level opponents. Now this is fair. The Gokage were able to team up to take down Kinshiki in some capacity, but I think looking at Kinshiki and saying, oh, that's the beginning of an Otsutsuki level threat is a bit of a fallacy. Because while sure, Kinshiki's last name is Otsutsuki, pretty much nothing that Kinshiki's ever done has proven to us that he should be considered amongst the other Otsutsuki. Which is why if I'm ever ranking Otsutsukis, which I've done many times, Kinshiki is always the weakest. In fact, I would say Kinshiki's power level is closer to that of a live Madara or a Nagato or even an Edo Itachi than to the other Otsutsukis. Because without him being down there, we have to assume that Chodoro is now an Otsutsuki level threat. And to me, assuming that Kinshiki is weak for an Otsutsuki is way more logical than assuming that the 4 weakest Gokage ever put together are able to box with somebody close to Kaguya. And Emil does an okay job explaining this, saying people have conflated Otsutsuki level to beating Kaguya. And I believe this is actually one of the more important points when talking about power scaling in the Boruto universe, because while people like Momos Shiki and Ishiki talk down on Kaguya, the last time they had seen her, she hadn't eaten a chakra fruit that possibly contained Shibai's genetic material. So they actually don't know how powerful Kaguya is. And while I fully acknowledge that Naruto and Sasuke are stronger as adults than they were in the 4th Great Shinobi World War, I believe that Kaguya is stronger than Momos Shiki, and if not stronger, at least comparable, which Emil agrees with, saying, but you need to understand that Kaguya is like on the high end of the Otsutsuki level. She's insanely strong, and most of the verse couldn't fight her 1v1. That's fair. Probably only Naruto and Sasuke. Koretsuchi and Chodoro are not doing shit to Kaguya. They get Ice Dimension GG'd instantly. That's fair. If you don't have dimensional travel in a battle against Kaguya, you lose. Assuming that you can't be reverse summoned back to your dimension by somebody else, else because Sasuke was able to summon Garuda in the lava dimension. The post goes on to say, but shinobi like Jiraiya and a nerf Sasuke are able to fight and beat Oroshiki, which once again, anime canon. Chojuro and Kurotsuchi are able to work together to restrain and defeat Kinshiki, while Gaara and Darawi were able to pressure base Momos Shiki. And yes, all of this is true. If you want to take the time slip arc into consideration, child Naruto and Boruto, a heavily nerfed Sasuke, and Jiraiya were able to defeat Oroshiki. Now, they were able to defeat Oroshiki because Jiraiya found a way to exploit Oroshiki's power as a weakness, as Oroshiki was able to check multiple futures, and because Oroshiki spent so much time in the stomach of the frog that Jiraiya summoned, he died. But that amounts to Jiraiya's battle IQ. The fact that he was able to find a way to beat this Otsutsuki level threat means that he deserves to be on the same battlefield as Oroshiki. But here's the thing. No amount of battle IQ can make up for an incomprehensibly large gap in strength and speed, which means that Jiraiya and a nerfed Sasuke were close enough to Oroshiki, a bona fide Otsutsuki, in both strength and speed to be able to hang in the battle long enough to use their IQ to kill him. Which, once again, if you want to take this arc as canon, technically puts Jiraiya in the low Otsutsuki level threat category. And yes, Chojuro and Kurotsuchi, when working together, were able to constrain Kinshiki. But so you could absolutely look at that moment and say that Chojuro and Kurotsuchi, when working together, are low Otsutsuki. And while I wouldn't say what Gaara and Darawi did to base Momoshiki was pressuring him, as I don't think if you dropped base Momoshiki, Darawi, and Gaara on a battlefield, that Gaara and Darawi would fare all that well, it cannot be ignored that yes, they were able to hang with base Momoshiki for at least a little bit. So what does this mean? Does this mean all 4 of the Gokage involved in this fight are low Otsutsuki level? Does it mean that they all made insane gains in the blank period? Or that Kinshiki and Momoshiki weren't as strong as we thought they were? Well, Emil goes on to explain that I'm going to define my version of tiers in Naruto so the rest of this post makes sense. At the top tier, we have Otsutsuki level, high-end Ishiki, low-end Kinshiki. Now, as I've already established, I don't fully agree with the idea of Kinshiki being considered side by side with the rest of the Otsutsukis, but if you want to call it your low end, that's not the end of the world. Below the Otsutsuki is the 6 paths tier, high end, 10 Tails Madara, low end, Pain. Below that is the Kage tier, high end, Prime Hiruzen, which we don't actually really have any quantifiable stats for, low end, Rasa. I think the low end should be somebody like Chojuro, but I guess you could put Chojuro below Kage level if you really wanted to. Below the Kage level, there's the Jonin tier, high end, Part 1 Kakashi, low end, Kurenai. Below that, there's the Chunin tier, which is Iruka-ish people, and then below that, there's the Genin tier, which is Part 1 Hinata-ish people. Emil states that your high ends by the end of Part 1 are people like Jiraiya, Itachi, Hiruzen, and Orochimaru, all people you could easily assign to Kage tier, with Itachi debatedly crossing the line into 6 paths tier. I agree with that completely. By the middle of Shippuden, we had our first for sure entry into the 6 paths tier, with Pain using the 6 paths of Pain. So you can push people like Sage Jiraiya, Prime Itachi, Sage Mode Naruto, EMS Sasuke, Sage Kabuto all into this tier, which makes sense. If you're able to scale to the 6 paths of Pain, which everybody he just listed are, then yeah, you should be considered in the 6 paths tier. He continues with, by the end of Shippuden, we had our introduction to the Otsutsuki tier, people like 10 Tails Madara and Kaguya, as well as backstory on the other Otsutsuki tiers like Hagoromo, Indra, and Ashura. Yep, he continues by saying, you can debate some of these to be low Otsutsuki or high 6 paths, but that's not really relevant to the point I'm trying to make, and that is fair. Considering Ashura and Indra to be Otsutsuki level is kind of a stretch when they probably highball to somewhere around 4th grade Shinobi World War Naruto and Sasuke. And I believe that 4th grade Shinobi World War Naruto and Sasuke would be able to have a very close 1v1 with Kinshiki. The post continues, my point is most of your high tiers from Naruto can absolutely fight the low tiers of the Otsutsuki. Like you could easily argue that people like Edo Itachi, Edo Minato, War Arc Obito, and War Arc or DMS Kakashi could smoke Kinshiki in a fight. That's not all that hard to do. Let's break that down real quick. Edo Itachi and Edo Minato are the strongest versions of both of those characters. And I personally believe that Edo Minato is stronger than Edo Itachi. But Edo Itachi genuinely has more impressive feats. Kind of. Edo Itachi in a battle against Edo Nagato with the help of Killer Bee and Naruto, but not really, Itachi was doing the majority of the heavy pulling, was able to not only deduce how to destroy a Chibaku Tensei, but was also able to seal Edo Nagato with his Totsuka Blade. Now mind you, this was a peak form Edo Nagato, because he was able to absorb chakra from either Killer Bee or Naruto, and I cannot remember which, and a Nagato with technically infinitely refilling chakra. So the fact that Edo Itachi was able to come out victorious over Edo Nagato without really the help of Naruto or Killer Bee, puts Itachi rather comfortably for me into what's been established as the Six Paths tier, but not all the way at the top because the high end of the Six Paths tier is Ten Tails Madara. Edo Minato is able to teleport the majority of the Shinobi Alliance outside of the 4 Kage-built wall barrier around the Ten Tails that was going to explode, and in like a matter of seconds. Speed-wise, he's probably the fastest person in the entire universe ever except for Naruto, as he was a perfect sage with KCM2 and Flying Raijin, something that Naruto doesn't have. But he got pretty severely beat down by the likes of both Obito and Madara in their Ten Tails forms, which means he doesn't scale to them. But if you wanted to put him in the high mid-end of the Six Paths tier, yeah, that makes sense. And then there's War Arc Obito, who's either White Mask Obito with 1 Sharingan and 1 Rinnegan and his 6 Paths of Pain, which would obviously put him in the Six Paths tier, or Ten Tails Obito, who is at the high end of the Six Paths tier. Now, White Mask Obito should have been way more powerful. He was getting pressured by a KCM1 Naruto, and he basically gets defeated by a KCM2 Naruto. But we're talking about Ten Tails Obito, which I believe we are, and we should be. That's a different story. And lastly, Emil says War Arc or DMS Kakashi could smoke Kinshiki in a fight. Now, I ride with one of those versions of Kakashi, and that is DMS Kakashi. However, I don't think War Arc Kakashi stands much of a chance, because here's the thing. While I don't think Kinshiki scales to Edo Tensei Madara with 2 Rinnegan, we need to acknowledge just how powerful that version of Madara was. So if I'm going to say that Kinshiki is possibly 80% of Edo Tensei Madara, the question that becomes, who from that list do I believe could beat an 80% Edo Tensei Madara? DMS Kakashi, definitely. Ten Tails Obito, definitely. But Minato and Itachi is where I start to get a little fuzzy, because we saw Naruto go toe-to-toe with this version of Madara. Now, albeit I don't think he knew how to combine KCM and Sage Mode at the time, and he might have been using KCM1, but dual Rinnegan Edo Tensei Madara was toying with Naruto. So I do think Edo Itachi and Edo Minato might stand an okay chance against Kinshiki. Saying they smoke him feels a bit far from me. Emil continues saying he's largely unimpressive, and to be honest, most of these people could probably fare a decent fight against Kagi if they teamed up against her. That is to say that if Edo Itachi, Edo Minato, War Arc Obito, and DMS Kakashi teamed up to fight Kaguya, yeah, probably, actually. But in that circumstance, the possibility of a Ten Tails Obito and a DMS Kakashi are doing the majority of the heavy lifting. And while Minato at that moment is comparably strong to Naruto, he doesn't have the Hagoromo boost, and the Hagoromo boost is absolutely massive. So while I do think they stand an okay chance against Kaguya, I don't think they win. Now, if you want to give Itachi and Minato the Hagoromo boost, then yeah, probably they win. The post continues with DMS, Obito, and Kakashi are proof of this. Same with Sakura, supporting Naruto and Sasuke in defeating Kaguya. Jiraiya proves this further by assisting Boruto, Sasuke, and Kid Naruto in defeating Oroshiki. Granted, they won because they abused a weakness in Oroshiki's ability to poison, but my point stands. Your high tiers from Shippuden, or even Part 1, can absolutely hold their own against your high tiers of Boruto. The power creep isn't real. You can easily scale Naruto Part 1 and Shippuden characters to Boruto characters and vice versa. And I don't think that's easy to do, but I'm curious to see how he does it. The post continues, for example, I can make the statement that Itachi beats Kinshiki in a 1v1. Kinshiki is an Otsutsuki, but classifying him as an Otsutsuki tier is kind of a reach since he loses to 2 Kage levels plus a very minor assist from Sasuke, which is all fair. Kinshiki probably shouldn't be considered amongst the other Otsutsukis. Sasuke was easily holding his own against Kinshiki while low on chakra from using his Rinnegan to Dimension Hop, which is a constant state for Sasuke and Boruto, but still, and only fled from the fight because Momos Shiki showed up as well. Sasuke was all for the 1v1, if not for Momos Shiki. Yeah, that's fair. Sasuke was going to battle against Kinshiki in a 1v1, but Momos Shiki shows up and he thought, oh, this is going to be too much of a hassle, and he leaves. Now, this is where I start to disagree with this post a little bit. As Emil states, Itachi is just as, if not better equipped to combat Kinshiki than Sasuke was. Sasuke fought Kinshiki in base, barely even using the Susanoo. Itachi has an armored Susanoo with 2 spirit weapons. If base Sasuke can fight Kinshiki, Susanoo Itachi absolutely can as well. And my problem with that is that we're basically saying here that adult base Sasuke equals armored Susanoo Itachi. And I don't think that's accurate at all. Even if you take the prime form of Itachi, Edo Itachi, the highest durability feat we've seen from his armored Susanoo is the fact that it was able to tank a Kiri. And just barely. Now, mind you, this was at the end of a fight that Itachi was planning to die in, so to assume that Itachi was in prime fighting shape when that Kirin hit him is not fair or accurate. Now, yes, Itachi does have 2 spirit weapons, the Yata Mirror, which deflects all attacks, and the Totsuka Blade, which can seal with 1 strike, and therefore he is well equipped to fight basically everybody. However, there is a massive difference in both AP and speed when it comes to base form Sasuke as an adult into armored Susanoo Itachi. Well, and the fact that Itachi Susanoo is not complete hinders him mobility-wise, based off everything we've seen, as he's not exactly hopping from tree to tree with his full armored Susanoo. That's something you can do with a rib cage and an arm, but not a full armored Susanoo. Chakra has weight. We know that from the tailed beast bombs. On top of that, the AP feats we've seen from Sasuke leading into this fight against Kinshiki, most notably him without the use of a Susanoo in base form, using his Chidori to destroy a meteor larger than the one that Madara called down in the 4th Great Shinobi World War, show us that while we may not have seen it, Sasuke has taken leaps in bounds in the category of AP. Tie that into all the hacks that an adult base form Sasuke has, like Heavenly Hand Power, the 6 Paths of Pain, and he doesn't necessarily need to use his Susanoo. Now, if he was in a 1v1 against Kinshiki, would the Susanoo come out at some point or another? Yeah. Probably. But I think base form adult Sasuke is mid Utki tier, and armored Susanoo Itachi is high mid 6 paths tier at best. Now, am I saying that Itachi couldn't battle against Kinshiki? No, like I've established, I think prime forms of Itachi could stand a relative chance, but those two characters do not equal each other in terms of power. The post continues with, in fact, you can make several arguments for many high tiers from Naruto being able to clear Otsutsukis at least up to Kinshiki. I could make cases for Edo Minato, DMS Kakashi, Ten Tails Madara, or even War Arc Obito, just because Kamui is such a counter to literally anything Kinshiki does. And I agree, a lot of the high tiers from Naruto Shippuden could absolutely be scaled up to Kinshiki, or maybe even a little bit beyond. I believe that Ten Tails Madara probably would have been a pretty good fight for the likes of Kaguya. Hagoromo was actively comparing Madara in his ascension to himself. Hagoromo, with the help of Hamura, was able to seal Kaguya and battle against her for 3 months straight. Edo Minato needs to be sealed, has massive chakra reserves, ridiculous speed, a very high AP with his tailed beast bombs, so the idea of him going toe-to-toe with the likes of Kinshiki also highly likely. DMS Kakashi is a given, it's the strongest Susanoo we've ever seen, and War Arc Obito using Kamui, so not his Ten-Tailed form. I guess I kind of see Kamui is very powerful. We must be talking about White Mask Obito here, but that one's the biggest stretch for me. The post continues to say that Naruto fights work a lot more like rock, paper, scissors relationship, or like type matchups in Pokemon. Certain abilities are hard counters against certain types of fighters. For example, I can argue that Orange Mask Obito beats 8-Gate Guy. Yeah, not because Orange Mask Obito is stronger than Guy, but because he can Kamui and Izanagi long enough for 8th Gate Guy to literally drop dead. And this is comparable to how I answer when people ask me the question, who would win in a fight, DMS Kakashi or 8 Gates Guy? I always say DMS Kakashi because he could just leave. But I don't necessarily think that argument works for a battle between Orange Mask Obito and 8th Gate Guy. Because while yes, there's definitely type advantages and strategies that people can use in Naruto to beat higher level opponents, if I throw out a level 100 Charizard and you have a level 10 Squirtle, sure, you have the type advantage, but it doesn't matter. I think the speed difference between 8th Gate Guy and Orange Mask Obito is too grand a distance for Obito to even get a chance to get Kamui out. I mean, he was moving so fast he literally bent space-time. Ten Tails Madara couldn't even dodge his attacks, but I get what you're saying. The post continues by saying, now obviously this is disingenuous to the actual power tiering of each character I mentioned, but you can make those statements because in the context of some characters have a restriction or a drawback attached to their degree of power. This is why characters in lower tiers can beat certain characters in higher tiers. Someone who's mid 6 pass tier like Itachi can absolutely box an Otsutsuki tier because of the way his specific abilities pose a threat to any enemy of his. I get the sentiment, but once again, level 100, level 10. Like, the Totsuka Blade is one of the most broken weapons in the verse. It completely bypasses durability, regeneration, and seals you. For example, if Itachi hit Kaguya with the Totsuka Blade, Kaguya loses and gets sealed. Yeah, and hopefully, the post continues by saying, now obviously the problem is, can Itachi hit Kaguya with the Totsuka Blade, since realistically Kaguya opens the lava dimension and Itachi falls into the pit. I don't think she would even have to use Amano Manaka. Itachi wouldn't be able to understand or react to her Yamatsu Hirasaka, which is her ability to travel between dimensions. On top of that, her speed and power is way over that of Itachi. And while Itachi does have the Yata Mirror, we don't know if the Yata Mirror can deflect an expansive True Seeker Orb, as True Seeker Orbs usually break the rules of all conventional ninjutsu, but I digress. The post continues. Unless he manages to power up to the perfect Susanoo right then and there, he's toasted. But that's, again, another example of how simply lacking a counter to an enemy's jutsu, in this case, the ability of flight, auto loses Itachi in a fight. Kaguya has a hard counter against somebody like him. Yeah, if you don't have dimensional travel abilities or flight, you lose. And it's not that Itachi lacks the abilities capable of sealing Kaguya. I mean, he kind of does. He doesn't have the speed or the power. It's that he lacks the ability to fly as a counter to her or lava dimension. I think it's a lot more than that. But against somebody as simple as Kinshiki, who's just a brawler type, that's comparatively easy for somebody like Obito or Itachi, compared to somebody who can drop you in deadly dimensions of her own creation. And yes, Itachi does stand a better chance in a battle against Kinshiki than he does against Kaguya, but that's just how power works. So overall, what is it? That's the end of the post, mind you. Is power creep in Boruto real, or has the story just changed so much that we believe it's power creeping when really it isn't? I think it's directly in between the two. I think the argument that power creep isn't real, being that some people from Shippuden would stand a chance in a battle against Kinshiki, doesn't really disprove that power creep is real. Because like I've already established, Kinshiki's closer to Nagato in power than he is to even Momos Shiki. I think a lot of people in the late stages of Naruto and Boruto have gotten inexplicably stronger. I think the four other Gokage being able to go toe-to-toe with the likes of Momos Shiki and Kinshiki is both a symptom of the fact that Momos Shiki and Kinshiki aren't as strong as we believe, and a symptom of the fact that they had to be scaled up to participate in this battle. I think Boruto, over the course of the time skip, got a little bit too strong, and I think the Shinju are also a little bit too strong. But if the idea of the Shinju was going to be 10 tails with consciousness, well then, in order to keep the power of the 10 tails consistent and to make sure Boruto wasn't getting his head ripped off like a grape by these newfound enemies, Boruto had to scale to the level of a 10 tails, which, considering the fact that Jigan was amping himself with 10 tails chakra in order to battle against Naruto and Sasuke, is a actual rather consistent scale. So is there power creep in Boruto? Yes, absolutely. But is it egregious and without possible explanation? No. But in order to understand why the power is creeping slowly upwards, you need to look at the story as a whole. I mean, the final boss of Boruto is an Otsutsuki who's consumed so many planets, he ascended to an astral plane. He has an entire wall of Jogan that exists in his dimension with him. There had to be some instances of power creep eventually. And while they might be happening a little fast for some people's taste, I don't think they're egregious. But what do you guys think? Do you believe that power creep in Boruto is hindering the story, or do you barely notice it at all? Tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And when I don't write a script, I just yippity yap.